The truth is, most of us know someone who seems confident and charismatic on the surface, but beneath the facade, they are secretly crumbling into desperation, lashing out at loved ones, or manipulating others to feed their deep-seated insecurities. This desperation is often disguised as a need for validation, a craving that fuels their every move, driving them to seek attention, approval, and control in all the wrong places. Have you ever found yourself unknowingly drawn to someone you'd later realize was a master manipulator, someone who made you question your own sanity and self-worth? Perhaps you've even fallen victim to their charming facade yourself, only to awaken to the painful truth that you'd been playing right into their hands. Throughout this video, we're going to dive into the shocking psychology of insecure people, revealing the hidden fears and behaviors that drive their manipulation, attraction, and self-destruction, and what it means for all of us in our own lives. When we see someone wearing the mask of confidence and charm, we often assume they are driven by a desire for genuine connection, but more likely, it's a desperate attempt to compensate for their own deep-seated insecurity. Their need for validation from us isn't about building a meaningful relationship, but about filling the void they feel within themselves, and this void is what drives their manipulative behavior. The reason some people have a magnetic presence is not because they are naturally charismatic, but because they are expertly hiding their insecurities behind a carefully crafted facade, one that draws us in, but ultimately leaves us feeling empty and manipulated. Insecure individuals often prioritize controlling us over connecting with us, because this control gives them a fleeting sense of power and security, which in turn temporarily soothes their underlying fears of rejection, abandonment, and unworthiness. When we become enthralled by someone's ego and charm, we're essentially seduced by their ability to manipulate our emotions and perceptions, but this allure is always rooted in their own deep-seated fears and insecurities. The most insidious form of self-deception is when we convince ourselves that someone else's behavior towards us is all about our worth and value, ignoring the very real possibility that their actions are actually driven by their own desperate search for love, validation, and security. People often use their insecurities as a shield to deflect genuine connection and intimacy, only to suffocate under the weight of their own self-protection. Insecure individuals will frequently attempt to exert control over others to validate their own existence and worth, often by making others feel inadequate. Behind the mask of vulnerability, many people who claim to be insecure are actually seeking validation, not true connection, a distinction that can be crucial in understanding their true intentions. The fear of rejection and abandonment is often a thinly veiled excuse for a desperate need for control and dominance in relationships. Unaware of their own hidden agendas, people with insecure tendencies often convince themselves that they are genuinely seeking love and acceptance, while secretly they are driven by an insatiable hunger for power and validation. The ego's constant need for self-protection and validation can lead individuals to engage in self-destructive behaviors, as a misguided attempt to cope with the anxiety of feeling vulnerable and exposed. When we observe the dark attraction of insecure people, it's essential to note that it's not genuine interest or affection, but rather a desperate cry for validation, a subconscious attempt to counterbalance their deep-seated inadequacies. The driving force behind their behavior isn't romance or companionship, but a relentless pursuit of control, a way to assert dominance over others and shield themselves from feelings of vulnerability and powerlessness. In reality, insecure individuals are drawn to those who exude confidence, not because they are naturally drawn to strength, but because they are attempting to internalize it, to somehow absorb it through association, and become less insecure in the process. This dark attraction is, in fact, a masquerade for fear, a coping mechanism to mask the existential dread that lies beneath their insecurities, and an attempt to find solace in the temporary highs of external validation. One of the most striking things about insecure people is their incredible capacity for self-deception, their ability to simultaneously believe both their own worthlessness and their inflated sense of self-importance. But what's even more remarkable is that their need for control and validation often precedes their conscious awareness of these needs, operating beneath the surface in a realm of unexamined emotions and unconscious motivations, rendering their actions both predictable and heartbreaking. When we're driven by the need for validation and acceptance, the facade we create to protect our vulnerabilities can quickly become the very thing that entraps us in a cycle of deception. We often hide behind masks of confidence and self-assurance, not because we're truly secure, but because the thought of confronting our own self-doubt is too overwhelming. Insecure individuals frequently engage in manipulation and charm to draw people to them, but at the core of this behavior lies a primal fear of rejection, isolation, and abandonment. This desperation for connection and approval drives them to craft scenarios, emotions, or even entire relationships that are entirely fabricated. As we navigate the complex web of relationships, it's essential to recognize the fine line between vulnerability and self-exposure versus the toxic need for control and dominance. For those trapped in insecurity, the perpetual pursuit of validation and recognition often becomes an ego-driven quest to outshine others, rather than an authentic pursuit of meaningful connections. In a bizarre dance of codependency, we sometimes attract and are attracted to people who will give us the validation we crave, but ultimately keep us locked in this web of deception. This vicious cycle of give-and-take, while masquerading as a beautiful partnership, can quietly chip away at our self-worth and erode our true potential. We frequently rationalize our behavior by convincing ourselves that we're the ones who are truly authentic, and it's everyone else who's trapped in their own web of deception. But in reality, it's often our own insecurities and fears that dictate the scenarios we create and reenact, rather than any genuine desire for truth and connection. For those who struggle with insecurity, recognizing and challenging these patterns requires a deep willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths about ourselves, our motivations, and the masks we wear to hide from the world. Only then can we begin to forge more genuine connections and break free from the insidious grip of this never-ending cycle of deception. For far too long, people have been conditioned to believe that vulnerability is a weakness, but in reality, it's often the only gateway to true empowerment, and it's precisely this misconception that allows the cycle of insecurity to persist. When we're driven by the compulsion to be liked and validated, we unwittingly sacrifice our self-respect and autonomy for the fleeting high of external validation, thus perpetuating a never-ending cycle of people-pleasing and self-destruction. Our deep-seated fears of rejection, abandonment, and being unlovable dictate our relationships, causing us to unconsciously seek out toxic partners who mirror our insecurities and reinforce our worst fears. Insecure individuals are often masters of manipulation, using their vulnerabilities as a cloak to hide their true intentions and exploit the vulnerabilities of others, and all the while, they are desperately seeking the validation that eludes them. By allowing our ego to dictate our sense of self-worth, we inadvertently create a self-image that's completely at odds with reality, leading us down a path of self-deception and ultimately self-destruction. As we explore the shocking psychology of insecure people, it becomes starkly apparent that true freedom and empowerment can only be achieved by letting go of the need for external validation and embracing our true selves, flaws, and all, for it's in this vulnerability that we find our greatest strength. So there you have it, the often misunderstood psychology of insecure people, and the alarming ways in which their hidden fears drive destructive impulses. Now it's your turn to share your observations and the parallels you've noticed in our own lives. Like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful explorations into the fascinating and sometimes dark world of human psychology.